So this story time takes place back in 2016. I was about 20 years old, and this is a story time about the time that I quit my regular 9 to 5 to go work in the cannabis industry. Now, I did tell you guys that I was going to take you through my whole entire journey from beginning to the end of my cannabis journey. We're working in the cannabis industry. Let's start it off by giving a little backstory. So at this time, I was working at Target. I was still in college. It was around the time that I was about to drop out, because I was already kind of like not interested, and it was more so like I needed to work to make ends meet because going to school was taking up too much of my time and I needed to pay bills. At this time, I was working at Target. I worked at Target during the hours of like 3:30 in the morning to around 8 in the morning, something like that. So around this time, my my mom was letting me use her car to go to work sometimes, but the problem was that sometimes I wouldn't be done with the work that I had at my job, which was like stocking shelves, in time, so they would ask me to stay a little longer to finish. And in doing that, my brothers would be late to school because they had to be at school around 9:15, and I would get off at 8, but I only lived like 5 or 6 minutes from the Target, so it wasn't too bad if I just left at 8 o'clock and got home. But sometimes they would ask me to stay longer. It became kind of an issue, and I had to start riding with a friend at the time to work, and that was the only way I can get back and forth to work because we had the exact same schedule. So that was going on, and I kind of just got frustrated with the whole like, can I get a ride, can you pick me up, this and this and that. So I was like, it's time for me to woman up, and it's time for me to basically just go ahead and get my own vehicle. Now, I knew it was going to be a risk, but I was willing to take that risk because I know that I was never going to be able to make the money that I needed to make because I was dependent on everybody else for a ride to different places. One day, I just was like, you know, I'm done with this. I'm gonna go get me a car. I'm gonna go get me a small little whip so that I can go back and forth to work, go back and forth to school, because I'm not the type to like catch buses and, you know, the trains and all that kind of stuff. I hated that. I absolutely hated it. So went ahead, went to the lot. My credit was not the best at that time, so they said it would be better if I got a co-signer so that my payments would be lower. I basically called my stepdad to try to get him to co-sign on my car loan at that time. He basically laughed in my face, so I did at that, and I went ahead and just was like, okay, not I feel like, but I'm gonna have to do this alone, because my mom didn't have great credit either. So I'm like, okay, cool. Would it still be possible for me to get the car with my credit? And they're like, yeah. And at that time, like I said, I was broke. I really didn't have that much saved. I had about $400 saved. But if I put $400 down, like, would that help? So they basically were like, yeah, we'll take the $400, but your car note is gonna be a whopping $452 and like some change. It was almost like $453. So I'm like,
wait a damn minute. What a damn.
You know, when you get a brand new car, you can't just get liability. You have to get the full insurance. So I also had to get full insurance, but luckily they gave me like, I think 2 months of free insurance when I bought my car. So I'm like, whew, I'll praise to the Most High, because I definitely did not have that money to go and pay, not even to drive off the lot. I was not even going to be able to set up insurance to drive off the lot with that car. You know what I mean? Now that I look back at it, that was a foolish thing for me to do, but I have to do what I have to do to get to where I'm at today. So I go ahead and I sign the dotted line. I go ahead and take the car. I got my key for a tag on my little whip, and I'm going back and forth to work, to school, and things like that. And during that time, basically my whole check from work plus a little bit of my FAFSA money was going to pay my car note and my insurance. And so at a certain point, I'm like, I can't keep up with working these hours, going to school, coming home, working, you know, on schoolwork and stuff like that, and then doing it all over again. I'm barely getting any sleep, and I barely make money. So I believe, yeah, during this time, I started to take my resumes and go to different shops and look on Craigslist. Now, during that time, there was a thing called Craigslist that was hot, and you used to be able to find cannabis jobs on Craigslist. So I had to go on there every single day, basically at work, when I was in the car, when I was at school. Like, I would be emailing them my resume, telling them, you know, hey, I really want to work for you. This is my availability. I'm available all the time. Hire your girl. For months, it was probably like 2 months that I was doing that, almost 3 months probably, and I never got any callbacks or responses. And sometimes they will respond, but they will say like, do I have any prior experience? And at the time I didn't. So I'm like, oh my goodness. And I knew this was good money because at the time I had a homegirl that worked at one of the trap shops, what they call trap shops, which is basically an illegal shop, okay, an illegal dispensary. They didn't have their paperwork in order. She was making, I believe, $12 or $13 cash. So at these trap shops, they pay you cash at the end of the night, and it wasn't taxed. So if I worked 10 hours at $12 an hour, that's $120. So, or whatever the math is, I don't know, I probably said that wrong, but it is what it is. You got that at the end of the night, you know, flat out, that's your flat rate. You will get paid based off the hours you worked. So I was like, I need a job, I need a job. So every job that I went to was basically like, do you have any experience? And I'm like, no, like, I'm working at Target, you know what I mean? I don't have experience in a dispensary, but y'all can give me some experience. Like, I learned quick and things like that. And they did not want to hear that. They're like, things move too fast, you're not gonna get it. Basically, go on about your business. So I'm like, okay, this is not going to work for me. Like, I need this job, you know what I mean? Because I was only making $9.25, and it was taxed at, of course, Target. While I'm in this job hunt, basically, I ended up getting hurt, like, really bad. I ended up stepping on a nail, and it went through basically like the side of my foot, and it cracked the back of my foot. So I literally had like a split in my foot. I had to go to the hospital and all that, and I had to get a tetanus shot, and they had to glue it closed. So I had took a medical leave from Target, and I was gone for maybe like a month because I literally couldn't even walk on it. Like, it hurted when I walked on my foot, you know what I mean? Because literally I had a nail go through my foot. Took a medical leave, but the thing is, when I took a medical leave, they paid me for I think like 2 weeks of work, and then they kind of like stopped. So I was like, okay, I'm still okay for now, but I definitely need to get back to work. And so during that time, I'm like, let me just take my behind and just hop into these dispensaries and keep getting out there. I had a bright idea one day that instead of telling them like, and this is not advice for anybody, this is just what I did personally, I'm just telling you my story, my testimony, what I went through and what I did. They're not gonna hire you, Shay, if you keep telling them that you don't have experience. Like, you're gonna have to tell them you have experience. So me being the bright person that I am, I go on Google and I start searching for things that you're supposed to know when you work in a dispensary. I ended up like getting on YouTube and watch people make shake and pre-rolls, and you know, just doing all kind of stuff, you know what I mean, what the weight measurements are, because of course I was purchasing cannabis at that time, but I wasn't really like into knowing them like off the back of my hand. I just knew what I was getting, you know what I mean? And I didn't know like it's supposed to be this, it's supposed to be that. I didn't know all that. So I ended up going on Google, basically saving the pictures to my phone, because I'm like, I need to remember this when I go into these interviews. So I went to like, I think TJ Maxx or Ross or something like that, and I got me like a nice little dress button down shirt and like some nice little dress pants. And I was going into interviews like that, and so I started to get callbacks, but people wanted to basically do a second interview, but after that second interview they weren't calling me back. So for the people who know, there's a lot of shops on Manchester and Broadway. This is the hood. Now if you know the hood, you know Manchester and Broadway, LA. So I went on Broadway, and I'm basically like, I'm about to dress it up cuter, because all the listings and the posts that I see on Craigslist were talking about dress casual, dress, you know, trendy, this and this and that. So I ended up losing the business clothes. I ended up going in like this cute little top and some jeans that had like flowers on it, and I had on I think some Vans or something like that. And that's like the bud tender look, like Vans and jeans and, you know, a cute little top. So I went in there and I just said, I'm going to get a job today. Like, I need a job. So I went into this interview. There's like 3 girls in the room. It was so like unprofessional. It was one manager, her cousin, and then another employee, and they were all employees, but they were all like family. So basically she's questioning me one girl's counting money and one girl is like refilling jars of weed literally on the side of me while I'm doing an interview. So she's like, do you have any experience, like what's your background, blah blah blah. So I came up with like a whole backstory because I'm like, I need a job. Like I've been out of a job for like a month, and that's like, at that point that was like the longest I had ever not worked. So I'm like, I need a job. I'm already a month behind on my car note. Like I need to make money. And so she was like, I told her basically, yes, I have experience, and like I told you guys earlier, one of my homegirls worked at a shop, so I ended up just putting her shop as my prior experience. And the thing is, like, these trap shops, they don't call each other to like verify information because they don't like people asking questions and things like that. So I was like, okay, if I put a few shops on it, they won't really know because they don't call each other to verify the, I guess, referrals, or you know what I mean, like the past jobs or whatever. So I'm like, okay, cool. So then I ended up putting like my cousin and my brother as my referral on there, and they never called them. So I was like, okay, cool. So I had figured that out, you know what I mean, very early on. So I'm like, okay, cool, got it. So basically told her I have experience. She's asked me like, do you work with any POS systems? Have you ever did it before? Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, yeah, like I did this, I did that. I work with this POS system because I had looked it up on Google. So I knew that there was a bunch of them, but I just needed to know the name so that I can sound like, you know, like I knew what I was talking about. But I really had no idea because I had never worked with them. Like I'm literally coming off of Target. I'm telling her, yes, I know this system, I know that system, this and this and that. So she's like, okay, you know, are you okay with making $10 an hour? So in my head, I'm like, oh, $10, like, because I'm making $9.25, that's tax. If I'm making $10 an hour, I'm like, okay, I'm making more money than I would at Target, because after me working, I think like 4 days at Target, I'll only make like 200 bucks at the end of the week. So I was like struggling, you know what I mean, like struggling. It wasn't even a full 200. I remember my checks being like 183. So I was struggling, you know what I mean. So I'm like, oh, if I could make that almost in like a day or two, like that's really good. So I'm like, yes, I'm okay with making $10 an hour. So I had to keep it calm, you know. She's like, okay, can you come in on Monday and we're gonna do like training day. Basically you got the position, but we want to make sure, like, you know, you go through training, and training is not paid, but you'll be doing that for like 2 weeks. And so I'm like, 2 weeks, like who's gonna work for 2 weeks for free to see if they can get the job? Like that's crazy. So in my head, I'm like, let me ask her if I can get out of training earlier, if I pick up what I need to know. So she's like, yeah, if you get out of training earlier, like if you learn all the skills you need to know, then we'll let you out of training earlier, and then you can start getting paid once you're on your own. So I'm like, cool, I'm gonna do this in 2-3 days max. Like I have to get it down. So me, I'm just like, okay, pay attention, do what I need to do, pick it all up, learn it. Even if I don't, I need to finesse it. Like at this point, I cannot go any longer without a job, you know what I mean? And it wasn't like I couldn't ask my parents for money, but at this point in my life, I'm like, if I start asking for money and handouts now, and once it gets hard one time, like I'll never be able to do it on my own. And at that time, I was already thinking about like, I want to move out, like I want to get my place, and am I gonna have to call my mom and dad every time I need to pay rent, or if I'm short on gas, or you know, a bill or something, do I need to call them? So I'm like, I want to be able to figure it out on my own so that I can have this lesson basically to carry on with me throughout life. Like just get it how you have to get it. This was like the first time that I had actually been put in that position. So I'm like, whenever I go through a hard time, instead of just like soaking in my sadness, I like to take a lesson from it and make sure that I learn from what I'm going through so that I don't have to go through it again. And so that's why I said I want to tell you guys my story with this cannabis industry, because this industry taught me a lot, not just about myself but about life. And it's basically my testimony and my trials and tribulations that I want to tell you guys what I've been through and how it made me who I am today. Go on my training days, training day number 1. I'm in there, I'm learning, I'm acting like I know what I'm doing, but I really don't. When I got there, they had like a bunch of like things on the board where I had to learn like daily deals. Every single day of the week at these trap shops, they do a different deal. They have a different price for each tier of cannabis. And then they, like, everything was different price, and they don't really put price tags on a lot of stuff. So by the third day of me working there, I was basically already on my own. Like, I had told them, don't help me, like, I want to figure it out. And working in these trap shops and places like this, like, they, in any cannabis place, they usually have music playing. Now, the music in the trap shops were pretty loud, and you basically have to talk over them. And at this time, I wasn't the type of person who talked loud. Like, I had a very low voice, and I was super shy. So I'm like, I have to do what I have to do to make money. Like, I have to get over this shyness. Like, I have to leave it at home. When I get out the car, it's done with. So I would have to go in here and basically, like, yell to the top of my lungs to talk to somebody who was literally less than a foot away from me, because they couldn't hear me. So every day that I went home, I basically had like a strep throat. At this point in my life, me and Eddie weren't cool like that, so we weren't even really like talking and communicating. So I don't even think he knew what I was doing and where I was working at. So it was just like, do my mom even know? I think I told my mom after I had got the job, but I didn't tell her. Yeah, I didn't tell her until after I got the job, because I wanted to make sure that I got it on my own, and I was already making, like, you know, money and stuff like that, because she knew I was working at Target. But for a while, she didn't think that I was, you know, basically doing anything, because I would be running the streets with my friends and stuff like that. So it was just like the same time that I would be going. I would be going, leave in the morning, I would come back at night. So she didn't know that I was working for probably like 2 weeks. And then I finally just told her, and I'm like, this is what I do, this is where I work, basically. She was cool with it. She really didn't trip. She was just like, okay, just do what you gotta do, as long as you're able to take care of your bills and you're able to help out around the house. So I'm like, okay, cool. So me working there, I ended up working at that spot for maybe like 10-11 months. I had a lot of crazy story times there. I met a lot of friends that I'm still friends with. Not a lot, but like a few people that I'm still cool with today. There, I have a few patients that I was super cool with. They used to bring me like food and flowers and gifts, just all kind of stuff, you know what I mean? They used to buy stuff for me. So that was like the best shop that I had ever worked at, and it was my first one. So it really made me excited about being in the industry. It really made me excited about being at work. And it was like, I enjoyed working when I was there. Like other places, I just felt like so gloomy and just like, I'm ready to go home, looking at the clock. Like, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. When I was working and like the cannabis trap shops and stuff like that, I thoroughly enjoyed myself, you know what I mean? I got to hear a lot of people's stories. I would keep up with people. I got to know people's kids and their wives and their husbands and just all their stories. They used to just pour out their heart to people in the dispensary. A lot of people just go to the dispensary, I'm not even gonna lie, to talk. Like, they will buy a $10 gram. They will spend $10 and want to talk to you for an hour. So we were basically like therapists as well as just, you know, bud tenders. So it was super cool. And like I said, I met people that I'm still friends with today, and a couple patients that I'm still cool with. Like, we follow each other on Instagram and everything. And that was in 2016, so that was a long time ago, but we still are cool to this day. So you can meet some lifelong friends and, you know, cool people, you know what I mean, just working in these places. And like I said before, in my first story time, I will be taking you guys through my entire journey in the cannabis industry, how I started making $10 and what I got out of the industry making, which was basically more, it was double plus some, you know what I mean? So I just want to share what I went through. Every job that I had at every location taught me something different. They all had different story times. They all had crazy things. So I just want to thank you guys for watching this story time. There will be more story times coming up. Thursdays are going to be the days that I do story times, and Mondays are going to be vlogs. So I'm getting myself put on a schedule. I want you guys to hold me accountable, because I do have a lot of supporters who support me, who wait for my vlogs, who wait for my story times and stuff now. So I feel like I definitely owe it to you guys to actually stay on the schedule, and to myself, because I'm actually starting to really enjoy putting out these videos and editing them and changing up my style and things like that. And it just feels cool. Like I have basically a second family here on YouTube. So I just want to say thank you to you guys for watching. If you got this far into the video, make sure you give this a big thumbs up. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that post notification bell so you can know the next time I post. Peace.